Well, wow, I guess the Steve's music got turned down and everyone got silent. I want to thank Kurt Nelson, actually, for putting together the playlist that we were playing as you guys were arriving, and that we'll be playing afterwards when we have a reception as well, too. Kurt probably spent as much time as anyone over the last 20 years or so in doing music with Steve and going to concerts and stuff, so that was a great thing that he put together, so thank you, Kurt. On behalf of Steve's family, his wife Susan, his boys Matthew and Jacob, his sisters Gail and Jan, his mom Pearl, his brother-in-law Rick, and his mother-in-law Myrna, thank you so much for coming and just remembering and celebrating Steve, and for letting them know exactly how much Steve was loved and will be missed. I know many of you were as shocked as I was to get the news that back on November 8th, while vacationing in Hawaii with Susan, Steve passed away suddenly. And in the time since I heard the news, the outpouring of love and support, real love and support from people over the last week plus has just absolutely been amazing. Steve was a longtime member and leader here at HBA, the Home Builders Association, and was probably one of the most influential people in the Home Builders Association that I've known in my 15 years here. But that's all I'm going to say about the business and professional side, because that's not really what stands out to me about Steve. What stands out to me about Steve, and the thing that constantly runs through my mind, is the number of people that Steve connected with and had an impact on. He treasured and invested in relationships and friendships. And with all the time that I got to spend with Steve, over cigars, over whiskey, listening to music, going to concerts, and just having conversations about all kinds of things in life, going to places, sometimes on HBA-related trips, to San Diego and Orlando, Vegas, and of course Chicago. We'd always kind of connect with friends and family. Just didn't matter where we went. That was just always kind of part of the deal. And Steve just made sure that everyone in his life was connected. I've seen Steve back up his friends when they were in trouble. I've seen Steve be straight with friends when they needed some straight talk, and say the tough things, and then give them a big hug and say, "Are we good?" And when Steve said that, he meant it, because Steve always made sure that friendships survived circumstances. Steve was also someone who put actions in front of words. You could always count on Steve. If there was something that needed to be done, someone needed help, Steve would be the first person to pitch in. If for some reason I got in trouble and only had one phone call, and I think a few of his friends here maybe have been in this situation before. In fact, I know it, because Steve, we shared a lot of stories. And I got one phone call, and if Steve was anywhere in the universe, I know I could pick up the phone, call Steve, and he would be there. Probably before he even hung up the phone. That's just how good Steve was. Steve was a rare combination of Chicago street smart, a remarkable creative talent. He had an insatiable desire to learn, and maybe the thing I most was impressed about was the uncanny knack he had to relate to almost anyone. In any circumstance, in any position in life, Steve could connect and relate with them. As much as he treasured his past and those that were part of it, he was also constantly looking for new adventures, gaining new knowledge and developing new skills and interests. I never left a time with Steve where I didn't feel I had learned something interesting, grown in my understanding of people, or gained an appreciation for something new. It was just Steve. It was just an amazing quality and gift that he had. I, like everyone here, will miss him greatly. Before getting into the program, I wanted to share a couple of things. First off, sincere thanks and appreciation to several who have been helpful in the last week, parts in putting this program together. Several HBA members, Laura Crestwick, Gary Phillips, Jim Field, Luke Morley, and especially Kurt Nelson. Also to Steve's sisters, Jan and Gail, who I've been on the phone with numerous times over the last several days. We started off trying to communicate via email, but they both have AOL accounts, and I don't have a dial-up modem. So it didn't work. But they were amazing, confirming what we thought in terms of how we wanted the program to come together and how we wanted the space to look. And also from the creative side, Jan's amazing creative talent, and put together the email that we sent out, and then also the program that you have. And I love the picture on the back. That is so perfect, with cheers on that as well too. That's just so perfect. So thank you. We wanted this to look and feel like Steve. And as tough as this is, I know that there will be a lot of laughter and sharing in the memories that we have, because that was Steve. And so we wanted this to feel like Steve. We didn't want to come up here and stand behind a podium. So we got a poker table, and we got a picture of Steve on it. And in fact, this jacket actually doesn't really feel like something that Steve would have. I'm going to take it off and wear a shirt that actually several of us have shirts similar. Steve has one like this as well too. It's kind of a bowling shirt. We get together and wear this occasionally, and it just, I don't know, just feels a little bit more like Steve. The things around the room that you see are all from Steve's. I was over at his house a couple days ago. I've been over there many times, but I hadn't kind of gone into the super secret stashes of stuff. And he had collections of, if you look over on that table, you'll see matchbooks and cigar wrappers and wine corks, and that is just a fraction of the number that he had collected. If you look back on the table there, you'll see concert tickets on display with some of the albums that were albums that Steve loved, and that's just a fraction of the number of concerts and albums that he had. His photography, we got a picture of Stonehenge over there that Steve took. Steve was an avid photographer. Some of the sports memorabilia or HBA memorabilia or other things around the room, we just wanted it to feel like Steve. And he didn't keep those things because he cared about the things. He kept them because they reminded him of people and experiences and memories that he had with people. And that's what was amazing. When we get into the program, we've got a couple people that are going to speak, some longtime friends of Steve's and family member. And then we're going to open the mic up so that people can share. And we want it to be fun. And one of the other things we felt would kind of be Steve. If you know when you do this, sometimes you're like, well, who goes up next? Once it kind of gets informal, and you're kind of like, well, do I get up and what do I do? And it's kind of like the line when you're on the airplane, like who's going to get up next to go in the bathroom? You can't stand in line for too long, but you need to go, and you don't want someone else to get in front of you. So how are you going to do that? So Steve had these two seats. He was from the south side of Chicago. He was a White Sox guy. But those were from Wrigley Field. And when they were ripping them out and putting some new ones in, Steve made sure he got a couple of them. And they were sitting outside his office. And I confirmed with the family, I said, it just seems appropriate that whoever wants to come up next after the open mic gets in the on-deck circle. So have a seat up there. That'll be it next. There's 2 seats up there. And if the seats are filled and you really feel like you want to go next, in true Steve fashion, just slip me a 20 and I'll put you to the front of the line. So thank you again. When we close, we are going to have a reception afterwards. We've got whiskey and wine, compliments of Steve. He had a pretty big collection of both, and we knew he would love nothing more than to share that with his family and friends. So that's going to be here, and we'll have time for people to just kind of share and talk and connect, and it's what Steve would have loved until about 6 o'clock. But I'm going to turn it right now over to one of Steve's longtime friends, Howie Nelson, who he knew and known since I think high school or early college, since birth, since 2 years. I know Hugh, it's been since freshman year of high school, but you've known him since you were 2 days old. Unbelievable. So I can't think of anyone better to come up and to start this off. And then we have remembrances from a couple of others, and then I'll let people know when it's open mic time and you can just come up and share. So.
Thanks. And I've never really needed one of those, and hopefully I don't need one tonight.
If you could, I'm sorry, we're recording.
But I will hold this so we can record. Because I do take instructions well. And I've got to tell you before anything else, is a trustee of the Builders Association of South Florida, I'm amazed at the outpouring of this membership. Steve was my oldest friend. 2 days younger than me. We lived across the street on the north side of Chicago, not the south side. And when we were 4.5, we all moved out to the suburbs together, and he moved a lot farther away. He was an entire half a block away from me. And we hung out all the time till I made the bad choice of moving to a different suburb. Then we only hung out all the time. I haven't seen Steve that much in the last 20 years, but we've seen each other enough or not enough, depending on how you view it. We were travel partners, we were hangout partners. We talked weekly, if not more than weekly. We talked about running a business, we talked about building, we talked about our kids. And I can't tell you, by the way, how tremendously proud he was of you guys. Pearl asked me to do a small reading. I've never refused my Aunt Pearl anything in my life. So I'm going to try to read this. Whether I get through it, we'll see. O God, author of life and death, our wisdom is small, our vision short. One by one, our companions passing along the road of life disappear from our view. We know that each must walk the same path to the doorway of the grave. We strain to see what lies beyond the gate, but all is darkness to our mortal sight. Yet even the darkness is not too dark for you, O God, but the night shines as day. You've created us in your image and made us share in your enduring righteousness. You have put eternity into our hearts, have implanted within us a vision of life everlasting. This hope we cherish in humility and faith, trusting in your endless goodness and your wondrous love. Into your hands we commit the spirits of our dear one, for you to keep faith with your children in death as in life. Sustain us, O God, that we may meet with calm serenity the dark mysteries that lie ahead, knowing that when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you are with us, a loving friend in who we put our trust. You are the light of our light, the hope in eternity. Steve, I will miss you dearly. We had planned to smoke these together in May for our 60th birthday, hiking in Zion, but I'll bring 2 with me, and I'll leave one for you. Hugh and Curtis. Hugh and Curtis, if you guys can come up for remembrance, and I could sit down and stop crying, that would be great.
Thanks. Thanks a lot.
I'm the big baby too. Love you.
Hi, everybody. In the bullpen. Good job. Good job. I am Hugh Gams, longtime friend with Stephen. I even today pulled up my Facebook just an hour ago, and we've been Facebook friends for 7 years. Congratulations on today. I guess I could start. I don't write, but our good friend Jordan had a post that he did recently too that stated how Stephen had the ability to be best friends, which he was mine for 45 years, but best friends with multiple people. And he just had that ability and that goodness in him that people wanted to be his best friend and be his friend. So I met Stephen freshman year. I lived in Morton Grove, guys lived in Des Plaines by where we went to Maine East. For whatever reason, my school made me jump around, and so I had to meet all new friends. And I think that we met at soccer, which back then, nobody knew anything from soccer. None of us played, except Steven knew a little soccer, probably the most on the team. And then we were on the swim team, and he was a diver, and our friend Lath, who's here, swim team, and we were the type of guys, and that's why I got with them so quickly. We weren't the football players or the baseball players or even the wrestlers. Steve liked to call us, we were the misfits a little bit, and but we had, partially because of that and our alcohol and drug experiences throughout the years, we had a very tight-knit group of friends, super tight, still now. I am also a remodeler, so we had that together with us. And those guys and Steven let me in, and Pearl was like another mother. She let us all in, and I was just telling her how smart they were, that they allowed us crazy kids, and we were not too good, but allowed us to do our experimenting, and still they knew that we had good hearts, which we did, and that we would hopefully come out of it, and we did, and made something of ourselves, and parents and fathers and business people, even though I'm sure that you guys had no clue. But yeah, Steven was a great friend. We had a lot in common. The cigars, the whiskey, the remodeling, the shows. He loved one thing different than myself. He loved to join organizations and be a part of it. And I was proud of him for that, because that wasn't in me. But he did that, and I know he helped, and he was president for a while, and that's why he's got such a good turnout. You guys all know him, and he was a big help, and he was a great friend to us. So I could babble on a little bit more, but it's all babbling. So anyways, I loved him, and I love you guys, and thanks for everybody for coming. And I'll turn it over to Curtis, who will do a little better because he wrote something, which is great. So another longtime friend. I did it. You can make it. Good luck.
We shall see. My friends, most of you know me. Steve and I went to Las Vegas 3 weeks ago to see Ringo and to have breakfast with Pearl. And I never thought I'd be here in a million years. Just by the amount of people in this room, it shows you how many he touched. I wrote this down because I'm not sure I can get through it otherwise, so I'm going to try not to sound like I'm reading it. I met Steve 10 or 15 years ago. I don't really exactly remember. Probably a Divine Nine event, maybe HBA event, something like that. What I do remember is I needed a partner in 2010 for Ernie's Open in Prim, and so did he. Now, if you've never been to Prim, imagine in your mind a smelly sweat sock. That is about all I have to say about Prim. But the golf course is beautiful, and so we started our journey as friends. You learn a lot about a person sitting next to him in a golf cart for 5+ hours, 4 days in a row. It did not take long for me to learn how we shared our interests. I learned about Steve's passion for music, particularly live music. Steve has ticket stubs to hundreds and hundreds of live shows. So as our friendship grew, we saw a lot of live music together. I've been to more live music in my 50s than all the rest of my life combined. And I want to thank you, Steve, for that gift. I learned that Steve was passionate about whiskey and cigars. I have drunk more awesome whiskey and smoked more great cigars in my 50s than all the other decades combined. I'm not sure that was a gift, but it was fun. I learned he was passionate at golf, and he really, really, really sucked at it. I really want to thank Steve for sucking at golf, so I didn't have to feel quite so bad about also sucking at golf. But that passion for golf came full throttle the next year when Steve had bought all the yardage notebooks, 2 copies, with landing spots, as if we could hit them, and opportunity holes and more notes. Anybody who played behind me knows this. Anybody who knows golf knows that every once in a while, when the stars line up and you have a magnificent day, then we chase that day forever. In 2011, we had those days and we won the tourney. And I know that was a milestone in Steve's life, and I was grateful that I was a part of it. I can do this. I learned that Steve was passionate about his family. He would tell me story after story about his sons and Susan's art, her classes and students and trips and contests. Susan, Jacob, Matthew, he was so proud of you. Thank you, Steve, for letting me be part of your family as well. Steve was passionate about everything he did. That's what made him a great builder, a great HBA member, a great family man, and a great friend. Now I just have one small story to wrap this up. Last year, Steve's foot was horribly broken. Most of you know that. From the first day back from his surgery, his goal, his passion, was to get well enough to make it to Ernie's Open and play. We even discussed his going and not playing. He would hear none of that. Well, he made it, but not without a lot of pain and perseverance. I went to the organizers, Ray and Rick, on one day, gave them a little bit of money, and I asked them if they would award Steve a gift certificate, for persevering, like being the most injured. It was some kind of bogus thing, but I knew it would be special. And he was so surprised and grateful for that award. So he took his certificate to the pro shop, and he shopped, and he shopped, and he shopped. Steve was also passionate about his clothing choices, right? Yes. So he finally landed upon a shirt. He purchased it, and on the way to the car, he gave it to me. Here's my brother from another mother. Next up.
It's hard to talk with a microphone and paper, so I'll do this though. This is a lot of people. This is awesome. Some fun facts about the Heiteen children. Not the young ones, the old ones. Older. Number 1, I'm Jan, the eldest. I taught high school English, a fact that many said made me insufferable, even when I was not correcting their grammar at the dinner table. I disagree. 2, Gail, the youngest, was often referred to as Baby Gail. She is presently unhappy that I just said that. And 3, Stephen. Well, Stephen was the prince. Are you okay? Are you sure? Okay. So instead of telling stories, I decided to use someone else's story because I thought it would be easier, and I'm not sure, so we'll see how it goes. So in that Steve was the prince, it seemed fitting, I think, that I share a reading from The Little Prince. And pardon my French, it's by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. I cannot, that sounded with a Spanish accent, I did the best I could. It's a story about friendship, about bravery, about growing up. It also suggests to us how to bid goodbye to those we love dearly, and where to find them again once they are gone. All people have stars, the prince said, but they aren't all the same. For travelers, the stars are guides. For other people, they're nothing but tiny little lights. For those people, the stars are silent. You, though, you'll have stars like nobody else's. And this made the little prince laugh. When you look up at the sky at night, since I'll be living on one of them, since I'll be laughing on one of them, for you, it will be like all of the stars are laughing. And when you're consoled, everyone is consoled eventually. You'll be glad you've known me. You'll always be my friend. You'll feel like laughing with me. You'll open up your windows sometimes just for the fun of it, and your friends will be amazed to see the laughter while you're looking up at the sky. And you'll tell them, yeah, it's the stars. They always make me laugh. And they're going to think you're crazy. But you, only you, will have stars that can laugh. Now, ironically, late tonight and early into tomorrow morning, it marks the peak of the annual Leonid meteor shower, which will fill the sky every hour with 10 to 20 shooting stars. So tonight, take a moment or two and look up. I feel very, very certain that when you do, you will hear laughter. Cheers.
So I don't see anyone in the on-deck circle now, but this would be the time where, just for the next little while, we wanted to just open it up for people to share their memories, their stories. I know, especially in talking to Susan right beforehand, she said, I need to laugh. So we've already had some laughter, but any of those would be really good. So if, I'll start with one while people are, I know it's always the first one or two, and this is one that some of us who have gone to HBA conferences and stuff know pretty well. But it's just always the first one that comes to mind when I think about Steve. And we were surprisingly coming out of a bar one night, and I'm not sure exactly the circumstance because I was kind of off a little bit, but one of our group, who shall remain nameless, Mike Arnett, was there, and there was some kind of a, occasionally people come out of bars, and for some reason you'd think they should be coming out in a good mood, but sometimes people are a little grumpy. And Mike had somehow run into a couple people that were a little grumpy. And it looked like things might be escalating or whatever, and Steve all of a sudden became aware of this. And Mike, were you going to tell this story?
I was, but you're doing it.
Okay. Good. So, because if I miss a detail, feel free to chime in because Steve would want that. But I just remember like Steve going up to the guy and he heard something in the way the guy was talking or something like that reminded him of back home. So he just kind of went up to the guy and kind of got right in between Mike and the guy and was like, hey, and he had this big smile on his face. He said, you from Chicago? The guy goes, yeah. He goes, yeah. He goes, I'm from Chicago too. And the guy goes, oh. And then Steve just got dead serious and went, and you know how we do things in Chicago. The guy turned around and walked away. And we went home. It was absolutely amazing. So I have more, but I don't want to share all of them. So if someone else wants to come up, and like I said, you don't have to do the on-deck circle, but those would be good too. So.
I will. My name is Todd. Employee of Steve's for 12 years. Incredible man. Just gave me the opportunity. I was a sub, doing siding. I said, hey, you want a job? I said, yeah. I said, well, I'm a at that time I was a single parent. And I said, hey, if my daughter calls, can I leave? Hell yeah. Get the frick out of here. Okay. Do I get paid regularly? Yeah. So, I know Casey's here somewhere, but over there. stuck with him all these years, and we're going to stick with the family. We are part of the family. So, yeah, no speech therapy and all that kind of stuff. I don't speak that much, but I'm actually a quiet one. He's a loud one. Anybody that knows him. Yeah. Guys, love you. We're here for you. Pretty simple, straightforward. Love the man. Helped me out many, many times. Helped him out too. And, you know, it was a comedy. And he was an act. And sometimes it's like, hey, dude, seriously? No, we're going to go this direction. And the cool thing is, after a few years, you know, he gave us the right to say, hey, call me a dumbass. Okay, you're a dumbass. You know? So I'm going to cut it there. I don't want to get in trouble with the boss lady, so.
Thank you, buddy. Yeah, I sat over that chair and I kept thinking to myself, going up here, you know, be tough like Heiteen, you know, be tough. Because it's not easy talking about this stuff. I have so many great memories of Steve, and one that stands out in my mind happened in this room the night he was inaugurated as president of the HBA. I know some of you were here that night. And it's special for me because I had the great honor of introducing him that night on stage. But the condition was that, because Steve's from the Windy City, they wanted me to do it in the persona of the Godfather. Which upon reflection was an offer I couldn't refuse. So kind of came up with some ideas how to give Steve a hard time a little bit about it. And so I looked up a bunch of old Rodney Dangerfield jokes, which you can't go wrong with that. Would you like a sample? You know, when Steve was little, he's growing up, his parents are very concerned about him. He's hanging out with the wrong crowd. There was a famous incident at the Chicago Children's Zoo. 4 of his best friends escaped. And then there's a young guy, and he was in the South Side looking for an apartment, you know? And so he's talking to the landlord. He goes, hey, how long does it take to walk from here to the L train? The landlord said, I don't know. So far, nobody's made it. I felt like I owed Steve because I owed Steve a really big favor, and it goes back to when I first started in the HBA like 17 years ago. I didn't know anybody. And so they had this golf tournament called Krabari. A bunch of you guys played in the Krabari golf tournament. It was put on by the gas company. And the format was, you know, they'd have like this one main house that you'd stay at, and that's where you do the cooking, the drinking, playing cards, watching TV, and lying generally about a lot of things. And then you go to your, you know, wherever your unit was out in one of the other buildings, right? So if you know Black Butte in September, it is pitch black. You cannot see your hand in front of your face. So the first night, you know, I'm there having a couple of cocktails and stuff, and some of you may remember this story. I went to leave and went off the step on the front desk and did a face plant on this asphalt driveway. Now, some of you guys remember what that looked like. Let me see your hands. What would you say? Let's put it this way, folks. I wasn't born looking like this, you know what I mean? So for the next couple of years, you know, that's what you heard. And Luke fell off the deck, he fell off the roof, he fell into an empty swimming pool. Like urban legend stuff is happening now. Well, God bless Steve. Years later, he was playing cards one night, and it got really late, and so he decides to walk home, you know, to his place. And, you know, you can't see your hand in front of your face. He makes a wrong turn, he gets lost in the Black Butte Resort, pitch black. He ends up walking around the entire perimeter of the Black Butte Resort. He comes walking in, I guess, about dawn, I guess. I get news of this in the morning when guys are, and I'm jubilant because I'm off the front page of the Krabari newspaper. And so So I see Steve on the punting green. I want to hug the guy, you know? And I said, hey, but Steve, I got to ask you a question, man. I mean, you're out there in the pitch black dark. You don't know where you're at, and you're in this forest, kind of. I mean, did you ever get concerned? And he said, you know, only when I realized the coyotes were starting to circle me. Now, my money would have been on Steve, you know, before I came up here, I was living in San Francisco, and I actually ran Chicago Title's operation in San Francisco for 10 years. So I reported to guys from Chicago. I'd have to go back there 2 or 3 times a year to see people and stuff. And so I really got a real sense of what Chicago was all about and the people that live there. God bless you. And Steve came off the assembly line, folks. I mean, he was a typical Chicago guy. But now I'm losing my train of thought, which happens when you're my age, you know? But I mean, so I guess one thing we had in common was, you know, he was from Chicago, I was from San Francisco, and we had that kind of big city, inner city experience at times, and so in a sense he was a kindred spirit to me, you know. But what I was saying in closing is just, you know, there's always be a spot in this Irish, oh, this is gonna be the hard part. Hold on, it'll get tough. There's always be a spot in this Irish Catholic heart from the Mission District from my buddy from Chicago. I love the guy greatly. We'll miss him forever. Thank you. Battle up. Here we go. Why don't we get somebody in the next circle so we can make this work? Thanks, kid.
So we're all here to honor Steve as a great friend and a great family man. To put it mildly, he was a pretty unique guy, and that's why we all loved him so much. I spent enough time with Steve to know that he was kind of the first guy when a concert would pop up on a website that he was in, and or he was the first guy to, let's go have a drink somewhere. So, or road trips. I know Kurt and him did a lot of road trips, and I did a few with him. But and speaking of road trips, anybody who rode in the car with Steve driving, oh boy, that could be a little dicey. So, but the most time I spent with Steve was on the golf course, and if anybody has played golf with Steve, you know that he could hit it a mile, but his putting was a little suspect, to say the least. And, well, who am I kidding? He was a lousy putter. So I always told him, and just recently, not long ago, I said, Steve, if you could just learn how to putt, you'd probably beat us all by 10 strokes. He'd always say, yeah, whatever. So, but the one thing that I thought Steve was famous for was his incredible flop shot. And we'd be playing golf, and he would hit one near the green, and he'd be 2 feet off the green. And I'd be over there looking at him, and I'm like, he's got to putt this. And I'd look over, and he would pull out that sand wedge, and I'd see him take a couple of mighty practice swings. And I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And he would hit that thing with a huge swing, and it would go straight up in the air, super high, come down soft, right next to the pin, and I would just shake my head in amazement. Now, he didn't always pull it off. I mean, there was a couple times I saw him hit it 50 yards over the green when he tried that. But the one thing that I always think about was when I'm golfing down the road and I come up to that shot and I need to hit that high flop shot, I'm going to say I'm going to hit the Heiteen. So I encourage everybody that the legend that he is, his last name is now a verb. So I hope in years to come that you're golfing and you will come to that shot where you need to hit one high and soft, and we will all remember our good friend Steve, And you might be playing with somebody that didn't ever know Steve, and you would say to him, hit the Heiteen. And then maybe after the round, they'd look at you and say, what was that all about? And you'd say, well, you tell stories of a great man, a great friend, and keep him in our hearts forever. Steve, I'm going to miss your sense of humor, that wry smile of yours, the generosity and friendship. I just wish I could witness that one last flop shot of yours. And all I can say is kudos, brother. We miss you and we love you.
Hi, my name is Jim Field. I'm sure those chairs were lead-based paint. Contempt. So one of the things that's, okay, so I'm not a golfer anymore. Don't drink whiskey. Don't smoke cigars. So what will we have in common? Well, Susan, when you went out of town, we went to dinner a lot. We went to lunch a lot on the fly at one of our favorite places up in Hillsdale. And I told Steve, you know, he had this, back to clothes, he had that one Chicago Mafia style black suit that I really loved. And I go to him, you want to buy a remodel? In Chicago style. So I said, Steve, when I go to Colombia, in Bogota, I'm going to get me a Colombian drug cartel suit. And I'm going to wear it to the Billiards Ball, which would be December 1st. So since that time is not going to come, this is my Colombian drug cartel suit to try to up Heiteen. But Steve was, I think, one of the times in Chicago, I met Hugh. Where is he? Yeah, we went to that Chinese place, and I think it was 2003, if I recall, and Corey was there. Corey Hasty was our Remodelers Council manager, and we collected all these awards, and Rick Sovereign had posted a picture with Corey and a bunch of, Rick Sovereign, me, Steve, and Corey. And we had all these awards, and Steve goes, you know, it's not that we want to win, it's just that we have to. So I've used that line, I've made it my own. But I'm gonna take that line from Steve, and we use it all the time, and Luke and I share that statement very frequently. But I'm gonna miss the guy, he was a great guy to debate with, because we're both strong opinions, and you better know your facts if you're debating with Steve. And so we'd always, as someone else stated, still end up friends at the end of the day, even though we disagreed and agreed. So I'm going to miss the guy and that lead-based paint all over this Colombian drug cartel suit.
I see someone else come up next. I had to do this because I know it's bothering the crap out of Jan right now. It's really a noun, not a verb, the Heiteen. So, and I just know, I know it was eating Jan up, so I just had to say it so that she could get through the rest of this and not, yeah, you want to?
Holy smokes, there's a bunch of folks. My name's Steve Frazier. I met Steve Heiteen, back when we started the Remodelers Council a long, long time ago. And after Krabari and Steve got lost, I carried a tiki torch around in one of the trailers. Garrett, it might still be in that little trailer, just in case he ever tried to leave last. So we had him covered. A few years ago, we'd take about any excuse we could to have a meeting someplace out of town. And I hosted the past chairs of the Remodelers Council and Pro over at the farm. And we did that more than once. It was a great excuse to go to the farm. And we'd sat on the porch and smoked cigars and drank whiskey and drank wine. There were firearms, alcohol, and tobacco involved. It was a great afternoon. And from that event, Steve took a picture of me sitting in the chair, and that's the sketch that Susan made that she gave me one time a few years ago, and it's on a plaque that I have that hangs at the farm. So, but what I wanted to tell you later that night, you talk about Steve and his passion. It didn't matter what he did, he was passionate about it. And we sat down to play poker. Now, not many of us are poker players, but Steve was. And he was passionate about the game. So we're sitting around the kitchen table, big round oak table, and we've got a wool blanket over it, and it looks almost like a real card table. And you could spill a drink on it, and we cleaned most of it up, Janet, honest. And we didn't even smoke in the house that night. Too much. But we're all sitting around the table, and we had a small buy-in. It wasn't a big deal, but we all had chips, and we're playing cards. And Mitch Stanley started running out of chips. And I was doing okay, so I reached down, and I just stuck some chips in front of Mitch. And Steve stopped, and he looked at me, and he said, "You can't do that." I said, "Of course I can." He said, "No," he says, "you can't do that." He says, "When he's out of chips," he said, "he can buy more, or he can get up and leave. That's it, that's the game." And it took us a little while to get him calmed down so that we could finish the game and get on through it. But he just couldn't get a grasp. We were just there to have some fun and play cards. It wasn't, you know, we all had to win, but only one of us was gonna, and it was gonna be Steve. So, I know I'm gonna miss him. I'll miss our conversations. When I was pro chair, or RC chair back in the day, and my vice chair left the industry, I had lunch with Steve, and I apologize. I convinced him that he should step in as RC chair and get involved because he was a leader and people respected him and would follow him naturally, and it proved to be fairly true. So, Susan, we're all gonna miss him.
I was there for that story that Steve was talking about. We were also burning stuff, so I think we had tobacco, firearms, whatever else you said, and we were burning stuff as well too. While we're waiting for someone else to come up, a lot of it made about how close Steve was with friends and family, and he cared about them, and that's mostly true. I did see at least one occasion where Steve basically turned his back on friends, and it was in connection with live music. It was at a concert we were in Reno, and there were several of us that found out that George Thorogood was playing up in Tahoe, and I had driven down because I don't care where it is in the U.S. I'd rather drive than fly there. So I had driven down, I had my Suburban, and so there's about 6 or so of us that piled in the truck and went up to Tahoe. And we were at the little casino indoor amphitheater they had, and since we had bought tickets that day, we were kind of near the back, and it wasn't that big. I mean, it was probably from here to the doors over there was where George Thorogood was playing, and we were sitting back there and having fun, but I could tell that wasn't close enough for Steve, and so at some point Steve just kind of got up, and we thought he was going to the bathroom, and 5 minutes goes by, 10 minutes goes by. I start looking around. I'm looking at a couple of friends who remain nameless, Mike Arnett and Tim Roth. And where's Steve? And we're like, I don't know. We thought he went to the bathroom. And all of a sudden, we looked down, and literally in the front row was Steve standing there, just chilling, hanging out. They'd done it so nonchalantly, right? So a few minutes goes by, and I'm thinking, I learned a lot from Steve. So I took my lead from Steve, and I just quietly left the group as well too, kind of meandered on down, walked down the aisle, kind of scooted in right next, went to Steve, and all Steve did was look over at me and just give me a little head nod. I just gave him a head nod back. Now there's 2 of us up front. We did it right. Then, next comes Mike and Tim. They come running down the aisle away, arms up in the air. As they get closer, it's like, "Hey, you guys!" Steve just looks at me and says, don't acknowledge them. Don't. We do not know them at all. Just stood there stone-faced. Security came, grabbed those two guys, took them out, looked at us and said, we're sorry, sirs, that they caused a commotion. Took them out, and we stayed and enjoyed the rest of the concert from the front. So, anyhow, who else is next and who would like to go? I know there's a lot of his friends here as well, too, so who would like to come up next? I did wipe off the seats, but I can't confirm that they don't have lead-based paint, so. Anyone else? Oh, come on.
I figure I should say something since my husband's been the butt of most of the jokes here today. I'm Angie Arnett, for those of you who do not know me. And I had the privilege to hopefully get through this. Meet Susan and Steve years ago through the HBA. And I believe we were at the resort at the mountain or something. And it was one of the first times I'd met Susan. And I went in there and I'm like, oh, here's this super nice, proper lady that I probably can't say anything around. And I said something about, we just kind of started this conversation. The wives were waiting for the husbands to get out of their whatever meeting they were doing. And something came up about, I can't remember the exact story, but Steve had kind of given Susan the wrong instructions for the day or whatever was going on for that. And a few cuss words might have come out of her mouth, and I went, sweet. this lady's right up my alley. And we just got along so well while the guys were kind of going through the chairs at the HBA, and got to know Susan and Steve so well. And I put this out on Facebook for those of you who are not Facebookers, and that's probably a lot of you in the room, but you know, Steve did always have my husband's back. Every time they went out, you know, not always what happened in Vegas, stayed in Vegas with these guys, that I would hear the stories, and it was time after time about the great times they had with Steve. And yes, to piggyback on Dave's story, the time in, I guess it was San Diego or Vegas, where Steve had Mike's back, and he always seemed to have everybody's back. And I, just over the years of being around Susan and him, and just having that great camaraderie and laughs, and you know, you could be super serious and social with him, and then, you know, talk like a truck driver with him. And but Steve just, you know, as much as you could throw down like being a woman's guy with him or a guy's guy with him, he treated the gals with such like respect and love. And you know, when I'd walk in a room and it was like, hey Ange, and we could just pick up, and I could talk to him so easily. It was just one of those really great guys. I mean, you guys are all a great group of people, but there's nothing like the smile of Steve Heiteen to light up a room. And as many of you were so shocked. And the one thing I knew, he always talked about his family and his mom, and we were always excited when he would go to Vegas, and he would give a call to Mike or the guys and be like, you guys want to bet on something? You know, especially during football season. How much you want to put down on the Ducks? Well, I'm the beaver of the family. And so there were a couple times where I remember he would say, come on, what do you have to lose? I'm like, really? I'm a Beaver fan. But he was just, you know, it just emanates everything in the boys and Susan and the family. He just, from a female in the HBA, he treated us so wonderfully, and it was just so great to know him, and he will be so missed. And his smile and just the hugs that he gave us, and he was just a blessing really to all the friends and HBA family.
Hello all, my name's Gordon Root, and I had the privilege of being one of the senior officers going through the chairs with Steve here at the HBA, and it was really fun, and I always loved him because it was always the greeting of how you doing, you know, and he would always, you know, the old adage of, you have to be a friend to have friends, and he exemplified that at all points in time. Once again, always very, very proud of his family. And, I remember those sitting on the porch out there at your house. It was, it was always great. Those were a good thing. But, as going through the chairs, and at first, Steve, is always busy, and he, his focus is somewhat elsewhere sometimes, coming in and landing. And it was kind of interesting. I had the experience, and it's kind of indelible memory that, I don't know, going through the chairs, you start as secretary, and then you end up being the treasurer, And so Steve comes in late to a meeting, for his first meeting when he was treasurer, and the financial report, many of you have seen it on the board, it's kind of onerous and detailed, and it's kind of new to you as an officer, really having to go through and get into it, going through. And I looked at Steve and I says, by the way, get ready, you've got to give that treasury report to the board in about, say 15 minutes. And he was in absolute state of shock. It was a cartoon sweat coming off him. I was laying there, or sitting there, and I told Dave, I said, watch him. And he did, but that was Steve's, I guess, initiation. But the one thing of, Steve had such a great heart, and I hope to learn from him, and I think everyone did. And I heard with the autopsy that they discovered what we all already knew, and that was Steve had a big heart.
I got another one. This is a short one. A few years back, we live out in the country a little bit, and one of our goats died, and it was summertime. It was August, and I won't go into all the details on it, but it basically kind of went down and was foamed at the mouth and died. And I made the mistake, as my wife and girls were out, of saying something to the effect of, we just need to dispose of it. And the word dispose was the wrong thing to say, even about a goat. And so I realized right away what I needed to do. And so I walked up to the house and changed my clothes. Had been ready for work and came out with a shovel. And again, this was August when the ground, is pretty hard to dig in. And it took me quite a long time to dig that grave for that goat. And I remember telling Steve that story. And he just kind of gave me this look, and he was like, Davey. He says, that's why in Chicago we always dig our graves in January. So he was thinking ahead. Now, who else has got something they want to share about Steve? Please don't be shy. There's a lot of people in the room.
I guess so.
My name's Paul Frankel. I'm from the old neighborhood, the north suburbs of Chicago. I don't know where the south side ever came from, but we're part of an old group of friends from Chicago, and this group of friends stayed together. Started in grade school through junior high, high school, and we had this big group of friends in high school. We hung out at about three or four different houses, and back then, the only way you could find out where people were was to drive house to house. There ain't no cell phones back in 1974 when you were a junior in high school and you were dating and partying and having fun and going out on dates, drop our girlfriends off respectfully by 11, or certainly not past midnight. But then what would we do, Hugh? Hugh.
Over to somebody's house and find a party.
We would drive around and we would look for folks' cars. That was the only way, and we all had cars back then. Or we had our sisters' cars back then. Or we had our mother's cars that you would drive into stoplights and knock over and never get caught, but we won't talk about that. But we shared a lot of time together, and there were some really, really good times. And as the years goes on, people disperse across the country, and they stay together, they lose touch, they come back together, they lose touch. We all went around the country, but and I wasn't tremendously great about keeping track of folks and where they went. But I always knew that if I gave Steve a call, it would be like we just got off the golf course yesterday, and we'd be at home with each other. And B, he would tell me what was going on with everybody. With Hugh, with Jordan, with Pete, Ohav Shalom, which means rest in peace in Jewish terms. With Bob, and going through what we all went through with Bob, and now we're going through it with Steve. And so Steve was the glue of this big group of friends. And I'm talking like 20 some odd people. There's a lot of people that to this day still share the love and togetherness for each other. And so now, I don't know what the heck I'm gonna do to keep track of everybody. I'm gonna have to find somebody else. Hugh.
Call me.
Lane, Scott.
I'll try to do it.
Jordan. So there's this group of friends who all depended on Steve for years and years and years, depended on Steve. And we're going to miss him so much. And so to the family, you guys, I don't know if you knew the glue that Steve had that kept us all together. Kept us all together. So we need to stay together. We need to remember Steve's heart and what he gave us all and what he meant to all of us.
We have others that want to come up still? Certainly don't want to cut it off. We've got time.
I wasn't planning on talking, but I just wanted to say something to Susan. Kurt and Steve were great friends and hung out constantly, either at our house or back in the shop in the little hidey hole there, or the hidey hole in our backyard. And one of my favorite memories is our neighborhood, just thinking back, I always, when you're in your house and you hear screeching cars outside and you think, those damn kids, they're racing up and down the street again. We kind of live on a busy street and people like to cut through, until Steve started hanging out at our house and I'd hear a screeching car out in front of my house. I'm like, Kurt, Steve's here. It wasn't a little kid anymore. And they go back in the yard and hang out and smoke cigars, and only outside, and play that damn playlist. Oh my God. Kurt always has a joke about he doesn't know any songs that were made after 1970. And he's right. He and Steve never played anything past then. They hung out. And Susan said something to me today. We finally got them. Susan came over to our house a couple months ago with Steve, who finally brought her. And she said she'd never seen the inside of my house. I'm like, how is that possible? Steve knows where the good tonic is and everything else, but I've also never seen the inside of your house, because they had something special. And you said that we just finally got together where it was the four of us. And I just wanted you to know you can come see the inside of my house whenever you want.
Who else would like to come? One other little story came to mind. This is a short one as well, too. But we were, I think, in Orlando, and we figured out that that'd be cheaper if we kind of shared a 3 or 4 bedroom condo. And so we did. There were several of us in it. And I had brought a little, I think it was a UE boombox, her name was On Tap or something like that, so we could play music in there. And we were up pretty late one night playing music, and the next night, Steve didn't want to be up so late. And I looked around, and I couldn't find, that afternoon, I couldn't find the boombox, the UE boomboxer. I'm like, oh, Steve. I knew it was Steve. I mean, I asked a couple other guys, remain nameless, Mike and Brian Schmidt, who couldn't be here today but really wanted to be. And they're like, oh, we don't know. And they didn't. They really didn't know. I'm like, okay, I got to think like Steve. Where would Steve hide this? And I swear to you, I searched every single place in that condo, every nook, cranny, spot, whatever. I spent 45 minutes or so looking for that thing. And it's not that big. And I knew Steve would, whatever he did, it would be taken care of, right? He wouldn't do anything that would put it in harm or anything like that. And finally, he came back in later that night or something like that. I'm like, come on, I'm not going to play the music, but I got to know, where on earth did you hide that? I've looked everywhere in this place. He said, you really want to know? I'm like, yeah, I got to learn from the master. So, where? And he walks up to the kitchen trash can, pulls the bag out, and underneath, at the bottom, totally protected, was my thing. I'm like, oh my goodness, that guy is so wickedly smart. So Susan, if you're trying to find some stuff of Steve's around the house, you're going to have to really look. But I'd lift up the trash bags and see what's underneath there. And since I just shared that, Matthew and Jacob are here now. They can't hide stuff there anymore either. So anyhow, I'll turn it over to Steve here.
Hi, my name's Steve Stolze, and I'm one of the remodelers in the Professional Remodelers Group, which Steve was one of the founders of and pretty much put together, and was the backbone and the glue that pretty much held everybody together for the first few years. And through his leadership, he brought on other leaders who eventually took over the group and kept it going and going, and we're one of the strongest remodeler groups in the country right now. And it's all because of his efforts, and partially because of his efforts, but mainly because he was always there for everybody that ever participated in that group. He's one of the reasons I got into leadership. I've been in the HBA for 35 years, but for 17 years of that, it was dealing with pro and getting things done there and following in his steps. And I think, as his friends have talked about, he was one of the pieces of glue that kept everybody together in their friendship group. Look at this room. I mean, it's amazing. He is a leader, he's a friend, and for his sons, you got to learn that everybody in this room respects him and call him friend, and I do. But I'm going to tell a funny story. So Kurt brought up the fact that Steve always got these books about golf, how to play golf. Well, I will tell you, for one who has been there, when you play with Kurt and Steve, it was a ball. We had a great time. The one thing you never wanted to do was be the group behind them, because they read every one of those books on every hole of every shot, and it took forever. So, great guy, love him, miss him. Best of luck to you guys. And know everyone in this room is behind you. So.
I didn't know if I'd be able to do this, but I have enough Xanax in me that I think I can. This is just, there are no words. I used to come to a lot more events early on, and I would sit in a luncheon or a dinner, and they would say, and we want to, and I would get annoyed with him because it was committee after committee after committee, and I'm like, you spend more time at the HBA than you do at home. And he'd go, I know, I'm cutting back, I promise. And then I'd go to something and I'd hear, we want to thank Steve for stepping up to be the, I'm like, what? Yeah, but it's just, thank you all for being here. I mean, this was such an important place to him. It was like his home away from home. And I'm just glad you're all here. I don't know what else to say, but I just wanted to look at you all. I just wanted to look at you all. Thank you so much.
I don't know if there's no one else. I thought we'd probably be close to wrapping up this part of it. We are, as I said, Steve had a pretty large collection of whiskey. And in fact, so much so that I told our catering manager, Rhonda, that I was going to bring some over so that we could just provide that complimentary to people. And when I brought her all of it, she said, how many people are coming and how long are they going to be here? I told her several days, so just hunker down. And but anyhow, there's going to be some light food. I think there's a couple of cheese and cracker trays and stuff because the OLCC rules say that if you serve alcohol, you got to have something to eat. So there's something in there. But we're going to have the music turned back on. And again, this was a playlist that Kurt put together that had a lot of the music Steve loved. We're going to turn that on. There's a place over there where you can put pictures and write cards. If you didn't say something or still have something you want to say or something like that, there's cards over there. You can look at all the pictures. People have brought pictures here, and if you have some that didn't have a chance to put them up there, the family would love to see that. And it'd be a great memory for them to have as well, too, as well as any notes. You can pin them up there. The beer and the red wine, which are from Steve's collection, are compliments of Steve. As I talked to the family, they said there's nothing more he'd like to do than share it with his friends and family. So that's there as well, too. And Laura, did you?
Yeah, the guest book. Came in another door, signing the guest book, please do that.
So please sign the guest book. And that would be really appreciated by the family as well, too. So thank you all so much for coming. And again, this is for Steve, but it's also for his family. And just to see this, I know, and for Susan to come up here, and the main reason is because she just wanted to see everyone and just kind of carry that with her. So thank you all again on behalf of the family for coming here this evening. Please stay. The bar will be open until 6 o'clock. And so you're welcome to stay and hang out and mingle. Steve would love that if you guys just kind of stayed and connected. And especially meet someone that you don't already know. There's a lot of friends that are here from out of town, and Steve would really like that. Not that you just connected with the people you already did, but meet someone that you don't know and find out what their connection to Steve is. So thank you all very much for coming. Appreciate it.
Hey, for clarity, Steve put this music list together. I mean, I would have never come up with Big Twist and the Mellow Fellows.